Good evening. My name is Isabella Jones, and this is my multimedia project. I chose to do the American Dream from the perspective of the narrator of The Black Cat, a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. For all the wild yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad I am not, and very surely do I not dream. Though at last I have discovered a perspective in which I could tell my narrative, a concept I have not heard for the longest time, the American Dream. It is a concept I could not grasp until I was older than boyhood, but younger than I am now. I had only heard of its earliest idea, written by our founding fathers, when they established certain unalienable rights within our Constitution. It is by these laws we could live more freely in comparison to the motherhood of England. But what good do rights have for a chained man? I find myself contemplating whether I should use this narrative, whether or not I have the right to compare my sins to such an ideal. I had only ever heard of this American dream being used for men of more quality than I. Yet in these final hours, I find this term to be the only narrative I can cling to. It is perhaps an idealistic narrative, but tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of aspects in which my dream was most prevalent. These aspects have been my most prevalent parts in life, my greatest of joys and my most ravaging of horrors. My dream holds all that I was and all that I held, and I lost it all the moment I sealed that beast in the walls and was marched here, to this cell. It has been some time since I compared myself to an ideal. I can only recall the definition of the term through a certain essay from my days as a schoolboy. Luckily, the American dream has remained unchanged and defined as the ideal that every citizen of the United States should have an equal opportunity to achieve success and prosperity through hard work, determination, and initiative. With a great strain, I can faintly remember the various aspects that paired with this ideal. With the American dream comes such examples of being self made, owning a home and starting a family, and pursuing happiness. I must admit that, since the beginning, I had considered myself to be a self made man, and the most humble of types. From my infancy, I was noticed for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart grew with me into my manhood, and I derived from it my principal sources of pleasure. My success lay largely through myself and my household, rather than a bold, outside condition. I considered myself never wealthy, but never poor. I had a great worldly wealth. Though I cannot recall every shingle on the roof or brick in the wall, I can recall that the house was of my own fortitude. No doubt the road to success had been generous to me, and I found myself with a home as beautiful on the interior as the exterior. I remember but one humble servant, and my pride in this household seems to lie within this American dream as well, if I can recall. I was delighted to say I had married early, and to a woman which, I was happy to find, she shared a disposition not uncongenial to my own. As I understand, one viable aspect of the American dream is sharing my success with others, and who better to share it with than my wife and our future family? I was especially fond of animals, and from my infancy my parents indulged me with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when I was feeding and caressing them. Furthermore, I could enjoy this partiality when I grew older, took ownership of my house, and married. My wife noticed my partiality for domestic pets and gladly shared in it. We indulged in procuring animals of the most agreeable kind, and filled our household with them. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. Surely no other household ran after ambitions as pleasing as this. Our founding fathers labeled this indulgence as the pursuit of happiness. And how right they were! Never more had I remembered a time so happy as when I spent my days in my own home, surrounded by a plethora of animals, my wife at my side. Yet, as I also understand, this American dream is at a risk of turning dark, reflecting a dark horror that could only be compared to the shadows of my own mind. Woefully, I can remember many of my misdeeds, though I try to forget. Injustice, social balance, my innate desire for success at any cost, and a freedom I found only at the price of death hanging above my head. Throughout the course of several years, my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend of intemperance, had experienced a radical altercation for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill used them. On the night after which my terrible deed of hanging that dreadful cat was committed, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. My whole house, the one I had built in reflection of my worldly pleasures, was blazing. It was only with great difficulty that I, my wife, and a servant made our escape. The destruction was complete. All my worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I was resigned to despair. All that I had worked for, all that I had earned, was burnt to ashes and cinder. I found myself without any of my previous comforts, any of my hard-earned wealth. My house was gone, just as were the creatures inside, and my wife and I were designed to a shell of what we once were. We were reduced to a poverty-stricken name, and at the time, I had thought this was the greatest of my horrors. As a result of our poverty, we were compelled to inhabit an old building. Still, I was determined to keep a hold of my dream. Furthermore, I could not let myself be deterred by the hideous murder I accomplished. I can look upon my drinking now and see it for the disease it once was. For what disease is like alcohol? But in the moment, I had scarcely recognized it for what it was. I made no attempt to hide my disposition, but nor did I make any attempt to cure it. I had been taken over by a malady, and I was helpless in its effects. I couldn't let myself be deterred by the hideous murder I'd accomplished upon burying my axe in my wife's brain. I had intended to aim a blow at the beast, but it was halted by her hand, and in my fury, I struck. I had set it upon myself, with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I had set upon myself with the mindset that my countenance could not be shattered, my success could not be deterred, merely because of the addition of a body. And after all this pain, is when I have found my freedom. It is only now that I find myself at peace, listing away my sins in the shadows. My dream, once humble but great, had since given me their consequences of horror. Although freedom had captured the spirit of our nation, it does little to me but offer a brief caress of comfort. The American dream has done little to satisfy me throughout my life, but now and only now it offers me solace. All that I had garnered in life is worthless now. All I am left with is resignation. May God shield and deliver me from the fans of the arch-fiend. I can hear the birds with the waking of the dawn, and my time on this earth is complete. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.